joining us, but I think we'll kick off. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. We thought at the Accord we've heard an awful lot on the media lately about what various politicians and others think are good for the sector. We won't go into whether those ideas are good, bad, or otherwise, but we thought it'd be actually really good to get some spokespeople from the sector talking about what it is that we think are really important over the next few years. So we've got 5 speakers today. We've got Sarah Walker, Malcolm Fleming, Alan Pollard, Keryn Davis, and Graham Moore. We'll just do a quick round of introductions, starting with Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Walker. I'm the Head of Advocacy and Strategy at Registered Master Builders Association, working closely with David Kelly, our CEO, and Nigel, our Chair, on the advocacy work that we're doing.
Thanks, Sarah. Malcolm?
Good afternoon, everybody. Malcolm Fleming, Chief Executive of New Zealand Certified Builders Association, and also Chair of the Construction Industry Council.
Thanks, Malcolm. Alan Pollard?
Yeah, hi everyone. Alan Pollard. I'm Chief Executive of Civil Contractors New Zealand. Been in the role since January 2021. So we look after the horizontal infrastructure sector. We have 480 odd contractor members, 280 associate members, do about $10 to $12 billion in projects a year, and employ about 60,000 people.
Fantastic. Keryn?
Kia ora koutou. I'm Keryn Davis. I'm Chief Executive of Architectural Designers New Zealand. We're a professional body representing architectural designers and architects throughout the motu. We have around 800 members, of which around 500 of them are professionals. Kia ora.
And Graham Moore.
Yeah, hi, Graham Moore. I'm the CEO of the Roofing Association New Zealand. We have 350 members and they employ about 11,000 people right across manufacturing and installing roofs. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. So we're going to launch into it. So each of our speakers is going to give us about a 5 minutes overview of the 4 or 5 key issues that they want to see taken care of in the sector over the next 3 years. Then we'll have time for some questions before a final summing up. So because we've got close to 100 people on the call, it's we won't have time for people to jump in. So if you can put your questions in the chat, and we'll sort those out as they come through and put them to our panel when the time comes. So we'll start off with Sarah first. If you could give us your views in 5 minutes or so, Sarah.
Thanks, Graham. Well, I think luckily for us, we released our manifesto called Building a Better New Zealand on behalf of our membership, and also what David and I and the board are looking at for an incoming government in the beginning of August. And there are 3 main areas within that we're wanting to see change with whoever forms the next government. So main ones under that are smoothing the boom-bust cycle to address our housing deficit, improving our productivity. We have some of the worst productivity in the OECD, and taking climate action. I think underneath those headings, and it's important to say that there's 3 areas that we're looking for change. So for David and I, there is a focus on system level change. So looking at the entire system that we are working within. As we know, parts of that are not working as well as what it could be. Some people would say it's broken, but that might be a bit negative. So we try and say not working as well as what it could be. So we are working, we've got quite an aspirational approach to try and fix things at a system level so that we can actually make things better for New Zealanders and improve New Zealand in some ways. And then we have more kind of lower level aspirations and for that, and some of that will be for our residential membership and some of that will be for our commercial membership. We have over 4,000 members, and we also look to represent the broader sector as well, so we can't do everything for everyone. But what we do know that's sitting underneath those 3 main headings, so under the boom-bust cycle, the big things that we've wanted to do is take the apathy out of both the sector and the government, that just accepting the fact that we've been under a boom-bust very high highs and very low lows for about 50 or 70 years. It was quite a shock to me when I came into this role 2 years ago to kind of sense and see that we just seem to accept it. It just is what it is, and government accepted it and we did. So David and I have been doing a lot of work around moving that apathy and actually getting an understanding that not only can we do something about this, we must do something about changing the boom-bust cycle that we are under. We're not going to remove the volatility completely, but we do want to smooth it as much as we can. I often say we don't want those rugged peaks that you see in Queenstown. We want nice, gentle, rolling hills. So if we can achieve that and look to the benefits in the ways that countries like Australia have done stuff, then that would be a success for us. So that is definitely going to be a focus for whatever government comes in. We also need to address the housing challenge. I don't know, some people might have missed it, but New Zealand's having a housing crisis. So if you didn't know, well, you've learned something in this session today. But I guess we would all know that New Zealand has something of a housing crisis. So we're very keen to play our part in getting that fixed. One of the ways that we want to look at doing that is around making sure that we can get the housing market back up and running. And for a lot of our residential membership, that's about access to finance and making sure that our consumers are getting good access to finance. There's things around land development and how we access proper land and how and what we build as well. So we'll be very keen to see what comes out of the next government and how we can get that up and running. We are also very focused on workforce capability. That's been an ongoing issue for decades. It goes across governments. If we took every single school leaver that we could possibly take in New Zealand, we still will not have enough. We don't have the technical skill sets that we need. We need to be attracting those from overseas. And as a government and a country, we've decided not to compete with other countries to get that. So we're putting a lot of effort into making sure that we can access the future workforce that we need as well. And as part of that work, we also need to look at the culture of our sector. So there is a focus on attraction, and that's very important, and we will look at the ways that we can do that, and with government and also with the sector, but we have to start moving to looking at retention as well, and that's where the real cost is coming in. So we'll be looking at ways that we can work with the sector to build our culture and improve the culture so that we're really not only an attractive sector, but we're one where we can retain the people that we get, particularly the really good people. And that's really important for our commercial people, because really experienced commercial guys that have been through technical, massive, big projects are worth their weight in gold. So that's what we're doing under Boom Bust, and then we move to improving productivity. There's two main areas in improving productivity that we'll be focusing on for the next few years. One of that is improving consenting. MB is obviously doing the consenting review. We applaud that, we support it, but it's going to take a long time. So we want to make sure that some of the pain points in our consenting system are taken care of now and in the short term. One of the things that there's a few things that we want to see in that area: better use of technology, more modern and innovation approaches. Obviously, we want to consolidate the number of BCAs and make those sensible. And we are also keen to look at how we can modify the consenting compliance burden so that if you are a really good typically probably be a volume builder or a really good builder or business owner, and you're just doing stock standard simple designs, then really there shouldn't be much compliance burden for you at all, if any. And really we're going to keep that compliance burden for complex architecturally designed or designs, or if you are not a very good person operating in the sector, then you should have a more onerous compliance obligation on you. So that's some of the work that we'll be working with MB on through the consenting review. We need to take the delays out of it. We need to take the costs out of it as well. We'll also be looking at how we can revamp procurement, and this is more for our commercial side. Procurement is a big issue, particularly for the commercial side of our membership. We need to look at having better procurement capability in the government agencies that we are working with, but also we need to, what we're looking for is a standard approach across government. We need government to be a really good principle when it comes to procuring with the commercial side of things. We have a lot of brutal clauses that are pushed down onto the commercial side of our membership, and there's a lot of risk allocation that we want to look at, and remedies and liabilities as well.
Sarah, I'll have to stop you, sorry, because you're a bit over time.
Well, I'd come to the end of that anyway. The only other thing I was going to say is we need to look at climate action, but that's going to be years away, so we don't need to worry about it at this point anyway.
Oh, that's contentious. Boy, that's the way to finish. Malcolm.
I can pick up on that one. Thanks very much, Graham.
Right, I'll chuck you climate change, Malcolm. You can go.
Thanks, Sarah. Three big things for me, and I'm wearing a couple of hats. So, sort of trawling through our submissions from both New Zealand Construction Council and New Zealand Certified Builders. I've got some common ground. Three for us, so I'll just roll into those. Tackling building unaffordability is absolutely key for us, and I'll come back and tease that out in a moment. Sustainability and the creation of a circular economy for the building industry is number two, so we'll pick up on Sarah's mission there. And the third is the forward pipeline of work, not only for the industry and the workflow, but also a secure pipeline of materials to do the work with. So they're the three big things that we've got. So that first one, tackling building unaffordability. Affordability and housing doesn't really go together at the moment. It's a bit of an oxymoron. But as the Commerce Commission quite rightly pointed out in their report of last year, part of the main reason for unaffordability is lack of competition and little to no appetite from designers, from builders, from the BCAs to adopt new products, new systems, new technologies that could lead to increased productivity and drive down costs. So we need to create a greater range of products to bring to market. And with that, we would need trusted third-party accreditation as being part of that, including confirmation that those products, those systems for external applications are fit for purpose for the New Zealand environment, which is high wind, high rain, and uniquely high UV as well. Some regulatory levers to pull. Usage of innovative products and materials and tools, as I mentioned, has the ability to create efficiencies and drive cost. However, it needs a driver. The industry needs to be pulled, as we've seen with the likes of adoption of BIM information modelling and other technologies. We are slow to adopt unless we have to. So I think we can look to some overseas examples like Singapore, who mandates a certain percentage of modular construction being required in their construction on their island, and also the UK in terms of mandating usage of BIM or building information for projects of a certain size or greater. So we need those pools. I think we need greater integration between the building consent and resource consent processes, which is another lever for the regulator to pull. And one example is being that proposal, which is out there at the moment, to provide a national direction on matters of national significance, including climate change and natural hazards. That idea needs to be worked up and provides some commonality between a consistency between BCAs and what they are telling people with projects. Reducing building consent processing and inspection timeframes is a biggie. Sarah touched on that. Enhancing the use of producer statements, greater use of remote inspection technologies, creating greater consistency amongst these BCAs themselves, both in centralisation of processing and rationalisations of building consent software that the BCAs use. There's various platforms adopted, inconsistent approaches. That was the first one. The second one, the one that Graham was keen to get someone to flesh out, so I'll do the job on that. Sustainability and the creation of a circular economy for building industry. Two parts to that, in my view: site waste initiatives, what we can control on our sites, and there's lots of initiatives in embryonic stage at the moment within industry, and we demonstrate a real focus from industry on this topic. A couple of things that I've heard of in recent times, because this is a strategic imperative of both the NZCIC and certified builders. There's a plastics accreditation scheme that is being proposed. There's a building product manufacturing scheme, digital hub for construction, all those sorts of things and others would benefit from a joined up approach from across the industry, from people on this call, from designers, from suppliers, from builders, subcontractors, etc. And the second part of that sustainability and the creation of a circular economy is all playing our part. And because we've all got a role to play here in meeting government's 2020, 2050 net carbon, we need to encourage usage of recycled material and recycling the building materials that we have, and encouraging industries to develop product and material, to meet that zero carbon by 2050. And we are, with industry, just quickly acknowledge concrete, for example, is a material that has got a plan of action rolling up to 2025 and then 2050 beyond. So it is all possible if we all play our part. And the third one that I want to touch on is the forward workload for the industry and a secure pipeline of work also for the materials to do the work. So Sarah's touched on the former, but closer at the moment between government and industry about the proposed future workloads and the timing of bringing those work programs to market so that we avoid bringing them all on a big lump, which stresses and stretches the industry, and then we have a lull. And that's sort of this part of the contribution to the peaks and troughs that Sarah was talking about. So some workforce planning would be encouraged, and Wānga with in conjunction with the construction sector accord has done a little bit of workforce planning, which a number of us on this call are aware of, following the North Island floods and Cyclone Gabrielle, the aftermath after that, and remediations. So getting that on a broader scale would be encouraged. And the final bit of that, I talked about materials as being part of that secure pipeline of materials. Certainly for things like the supply of wood processing industry, for example. The lack of that certainty of supply is inhibiting investment in CLT and LVL manufacturing, and they cannot currently satisfy market demand for that. And also certainty of supply to encourage investment in innovative new product technologies, for example, long-term supply agreements for things like modular construction.
We'll have to cut you off as well, sorry.
Yep. Bang on. That was it, right?
Well done. Alan, let's jump to the civil sector.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks.
Just get those, there's not too many questions there at the moment, so just a reminder to people to chuck some questions in the chat. Sorry, Alan.
That's all right. Sarah's ready to answer all those questions too, so great. So hey, look, thanks. Just to put some context around it, I just want to throw some stats out there first. We've just released our annual membership survey we conduct in partnership with Teletrack Navman, and it puts out a few interesting stats. One is that only 34% of our industry is confident in the future outlook of the civil sector. About 84% believe that having a clearer pipeline of work will make a huge positive difference to the industry. 2/3 of the sector has been affected by the severe weather events, so whether that's project delays or contract changes. About 3/4 believe that infrastructure investment should be one of the two top priorities of an incoming government. But on the other hand, only about 18% of the respondents were actually confident that the government has a commitment to infrastructure. Only 9% were confident that adequate funding would be made available, and only 7% were confident that our infrastructure can sustain ongoing climate change events. So it's quite a telling set of stats. So in that context, the three areas really that the industry has highlighted as important, first and foremost, that's having a committed and funded program of work. I think, Malcolm, you referred to that earlier. So we've got Te Wāhanga's 30-year strategy, which sets out a really ambitious plan over the next 30 years. We've got the budget providing $71 billion for infrastructure investment and $6 billion for resilience work. We've got the land transport government policy statement recently released, which promises a large increase in funding, but promises just don't get things built. So at the end, it's only having a committed and funded program of work that gives our members the confidence to invest in the people and the technology needed to deliver on those projects. And there's a few things aligned with that which we'd like to see some movement and recognition on. First, as a bugbear of mine, there is this feeling amongst government that one size fits all in construction, and it's simply not the case. The horizontal sector is very different to the vertical sector, and so we need to see some recognition of that distinction. We see it starkly demonstrated in some of the policy decisions being made, particularly around immigration. So we want to see the reflection of horizontal coming through and a better understanding of that as our obligation to make that happen. Second, I think it was Sarah referred to procurement processes. Poor procurement processes impact productivity. We'd like to see some real change in thinking around procurement. And one obvious area for us actually is the over-engineering or over-design of project solutions. It's so wasteful, it's so costly, and it's unnecessary. So we don't need bespoke designs every time a project is tendered for. Existing designs can often offer up better, more cost-effective, more timely solutions. Third, we want to see clients continue to invest in the interim while the program is established. And we have this really bizarre situation at the moment where there is so much to do and so many promises to be made, but we're seeing clients cancelling contracts or reprioritising contracts. And we see a number of our contractors relatively quiet on their book. So this uncertainty flows right through the sector, puts our ability to deliver on these projects at risk. And fourthly, in this sort of committed program of work, we want to see a more effective infrastructure funding and investment mechanism. We've got a huge investment program ahead, but I really fear how this is going to be paid for. And whoever comes in to control the Treasury benches after the 14th of October is going to find, as we know, the cupboard is bare. So we can't afford to take the same approach to infrastructure investment that we have in the past. We need to be much more creative in how we fund short, medium, and long-term projects. Second area that features heavily in our survey, and Malcolm referred to it in his comments, is around the labour shortage and the need for a skilled and reliable labour force. 72% of our members in the surveys identified this as a major problem, and contrary to what you might hear from some circles, we actually do continue to have a labour shortage right now. So there's a few ways we need that addressed. One is around technology, and it's a big topic in itself, which I won't go into, but that will have immediate impacts on productivity. A second is having an education system that actually produces students and candidates with the attitude and aptitude to work. And we do find that a lot of people coming out of school haven't been pointed towards trades training through the career advisor process, or they don't have an understanding of what it really means to go work. So we have to invest significantly in pre-employment programs just to get people work ready. The other side of that, of course, is I think Sarah might have mentioned, there's just not enough domestic workforce to deal with the critical shortage across all of construction, let alone all of our economy. So the immigration pathway has to improve, and we have to remove the barriers to entry to make that a much more sustainable path. Having said that, I do want to acknowledge that earlier this week there was an announcement that a couple of civil roles have been added to the green list, which we welcome. More significantly, though, a number of civil roles have been added to the construction sector agreement, which we really welcome, because there were no civil roles on that list previously. So while we actually believe the pay expectations are quite unrealistic, we are pleased to see the advocacy work coming and producing results. The last area that I really want to see some movement on from an incoming government is around mental health. You know, we've got to see better support for the industry. It's just unfathomable to think that we're still losing on average a person a week to suicide. And yet organisations such as Mates in Construction, they have these continuing long-term battles with bureaucracy to achieve funding. That's got to change. So the next 3 years, I'd like to see mental health actually taken seriously by the parties and some real tangible support provided to try and turn around that unacceptable problem. So look, that's three of the key areas. There are a number of others on our wish list, and we're really looking forward, frankly, to negotiating with the incoming government to see those as priorities going forward. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you, Alan. And on time. Perfect. Keryn, let's hear from some designers' point of view.
Yeah, fabulous. And thanks so much, everybody. It's lovely hearing all of what you're saying. There's so many synergies across this group, and it's fantastic. So I guess what can I add? When I went out and asked what's on top for the designers and architects that we represent, productivity, like many of you, is still really hot in their minds too. Lifting productivity in the sector is incredibly challenging. We know that. We wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't a problem that has been enduring for some time. I think what's on the minds of our members is that there are some important day-to-day productivity issues which impact on them negatively every single day, and that would have to be, the number one would be the consenting system and the way it is applied or inconsistently applied across the country and across individuals. And look, designers have a part to play in that too. Of course, we know that. So it's not a putting the finger at anybody in particular, but it is a big challenge for us as a sector. So if we can tackle that, and we're right behind, the review, this is a deep dive and it's going to take us some time, but we're absolutely committed to it. But that would have a massive impact for our members on a day-to-day basis in terms of productivity, and the flow-on effects, of course, to the consumers. It's a no-brainer. But it is incredibly challenging one to solve. I think related to productivity, as many of you have talked about, is our workforce. I think particularly in architecture, we have an aging workforce that so many, of course, we all have that issue too. We have a number who will be leaving the industry in the not too distant future, but we do not have a strong enough pipeline coming through. And that pipeline that is coming through are a different kind of designer. They are much more diverse. They want a different kind of career. And so we have to really focus on ensuring that the sector is ready to receive that new generation of design professionals and architectural professionals. So I think we've still got a heck of a lot of work to do to ensure that we are good workplaces for our new generation of designers. And I think there's a lot more we could do in terms of educating business owners and leaders in the sector to support them to be more ready for a new generation of professionals entering their workplaces. And ultimately, that's going to lead to success for those people and better engagement and productivity. We've talked about climate change. Boy, this is a biggie. And I know, Sarah, that you were just joking before that it's not here yet, so we don't need to worry about it. I know that was just a joke. It's a big challenge. It's huge. We've got a lot to do in terms of educating designers. There is still much to do. Again, it's joining forces, and again, joined up thinking that I've heard repeatedly today. We have to have every end of that system working together, and we know that it's a very challenging one. Perhaps the biggest challenge that as architectural designers and architects that our members face is the apathy from their clients. We simply don't see enough value being put on building performance, and it's a big challenge for us. So our members have to show real leadership and be brave and bold. But if your client's pushing back, that's a big challenge. So we've got a big force there to work against. So we just want to emphasize we need, we simply, as I said, don't have enough clients who care enough. It's about public education, 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 and if not that, the carrot and the stick, because we just have to accelerate change, and it's just not coming fast enough. And we are acutely aware of that. So building performance is still a big issue for us. Our members are still challenged by some of the concerns that they have around moisture, and don't feel that that has been dealt with yet. So we're still looking for more guidance there. And some of our measures are too blunt, so there's still a lot of work to do. Many have talked about the peaks and troughs. And Sarah, I'm really behind you on smoothing that out. It's going to be a big challenge, and the systems level thinking, of course, is necessary with every single issue we've raised so far. For us, that's certainly about equipping the sector is going to go a long way, equipping the sector to better anticipate, to buffer, or to navigate those peaks and troughs. If anything, we know the uncertainty seems to be pretty certain. So any way that we can navigate and support the sector to navigate that, it's just absolutely the heart of what we want. And again, it feels like that's education. Can see that there's some good work going on with the Accord in this area. We just want more of that. But again, it needs to happen across the entire industry. I've probably not quite used up my time, but I think there's been lots of overlaps anyway. So back to you, Graham.
Thanks, Keryn. And Graham Moore, over to you for the final
Thanks,
comment.
Graham. I think my colleagues here have pretty much covered all the sort of higher level stuff. I probably want to get down to a bit of detail, and I've heard a few potential government ministers speak at a few forums recently, and some of them scare the crap out of me with some of the stuff that they came out with. I think it's really concerning to hear that they're looking, especially around industry training, to put bullets and things like Te Pokenga and our WDC, for example. Now, Wahanga Araro, our WDC are a really high performer is for the construction trades, and I think it needs to be kept. So some of these politicians saying we need to get rid of some of the stuff because we didn't think it up, we're going to send ourselves backwards as industry, so we shouldn't be doing any of that. I'm a bit concerned about the way they're talking about almost unshackling the borders and letting products come across the border. And it's all real to say, oh, well, we're going to, if it lines up with something else, but we really need to know that when you bring products in, they're going to work in our environment. There is no way our consumers should have their buildings working as an experiment. That's not fair, and it's not right. So if something works and we know it works with overseas standards, for example, and we can line them up with New Zealand standards and they'll perform, fill your boots, bring them in. We're not anti-competitive. We just need to know that these things are going to work. I think sort of more locally for us as an industry, the LBP scheme needs a kick in the ass. It's not actually servicing the industry as well as it should. It's an absolute nonsense that I have to be an LBP to put your new roof on. I do not need to be licensed to do your re-roof. We've got things like that, and this has been going on for years. So talk about productivity from the sector. How about some productivity from the regulator? This has just dawdled along for far too long. There are really knowledgeable people, as you can hear from this group, that actually want to get some stuff done, but we seem to just dither and take ages and years to get anywhere with some of the stuff. The other part of the LBP scheme that needs addressing too, we've allocated the risk pooling. The business owners should be culpable or be assuming some of this risk for their employees. It's not right that it sits purely with the LBP, so that needs addressing. I pick up on the sustainability side of it, and I think from a consumer's point of view, we need to actually make that more simple. You go in to buy an appliance that consumes electricity, it'll have an energy rating on the front of it. And so you can look at that product from that company and that one from there, and you can read the rating. But we don't seem to be able to do this with carbon footprints or whatever measure we want to put in place. So if we knew this was, an A+ carbon footprint and this one is a D, well, then you can start making some good decisions around your purchasing. There's so much information out there, and I've heard terms like greenwashing and all that sort of thing. But if you sit there and try and consume all of that information and try and make an informed decision, you're going to struggle because there's just too much of it, and it's too hard to figure out which is actually the best. What are the life cycles of it? What is its long-term output? There's a whole lot of stuff that we just haven't educated the sector particularly well in. My colleagues here, we've all got similar problems. We just got them in our own boxes that we have to deal with. And I think it's really powerful that obviously the sector accord is bringing us together to do this sort of thing, because I think we're all reliant on each other doing their parts of it. So we all need to be joined together and seeking similar outcomes. we too have the same problem around people. We well know that there's not enough people coming out of the school system to fill our boxes full of people going forward. Immigration will be part of that, but we need to possibly back to industry training, looking to get the school system more joined up to sell the sizzle of being in the construction sector. None of us have done that particularly well for a long, long time. So plenty to do. I'm just a little bit concerned that we may see a bit of, I don't know, slash and burn from whoever the next government is. So adopt the best of what's there. And then if you're going to bring new stuff, if you're a new government, that's fine too. But first of all, please engage with industry before you decide to chuck something out. Thanks, Graham.
Cheers, Graham. Hard hitting to round it out. Some key themes coming through, and Graham, you just talked about that transition from school, and I believe Alan, you spoke about it in similar ways. Maybe the two of you start off with Alan. Could round up a little bit. What do you think the government could do to actually facilitate better transitions from school to work?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few things, Graham. I think looking at the school curriculum is one of them. The old days of trades training, but I think a number in the industry remember those days, and actually elevating the importance of the trades and the amazing career paths that they represent. It's a bit sad that, as I said, career advisors don't really support or understand or support the industry. And a lot of parents don't understand it. I've been to trade shows where you have a stand at a careers event, and they push their kids away from the stand because they don't believe that they offer the sort of rewarding career that they want their children to have. So we've got to better do that. I think part of the answer, though, too, is the industry is better engaging directly with schools as well. So a number of our larger employees are directly connected with secondary schools around the country, providing work experience, providing resources to schools to try and help tell that tale to get kids interested in coming into work for the sector.
Thanks, Alan. Graham, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, there's this falsehood or belief that, academia is the way forward of junior and is going to be a super success going forward. And I think part of it is we haven't created really nice career pathways that people can follow. Are you going to sweat in the trades? Yeah, you will from time to time, depending on what you get up to. But there's nothing wrong with that. But we also need to show that that's not where you're going to be for the next 10, 15, 20 years of your working career either. And I think part of it too, as employers, we need to look at the way we engage with people so that when we're talking at these school options, that those parents that Alan were talking about aren't come on, junior, come away from that table. They're pushing them forward to that table so they can understand the opportunities that trades can give them. So yeah, we haven't joined that up particularly well, and we've got to change the way we interact with people. We seem to, for some of us, hopefully not me, we employ them the same way we were employed. And we need to actually change how we do that going forward as well. So we need to be more adaptive in that space.
Thanks, Graham. There's been a common theme coming through about the boom-bust cycles affecting the industry. Maybe another, Sarah, you're talking about working at a system level. What do you think some of the things? What do you think some of the key things government could do to take out some of those peaks and troughs?
I think we're looking to Australia to see what they did during the GFC, because they recovered a lot quicker than what we did, particularly in our sector. So taking some of the learnings that they did over there in Australia and looking at what they did and bringing those in here. I think it's also having a really long-term, strong, committed pipeline that is more than just 3 yearly cycles for particularly infrastructure in New Zealand, so that we know 15 to 20 years out what that pipeline of government spend is going to be, and that then enables a committed, better response. And so the government's own spending looks to take the heat out of the market or out of our sector when it starts to go up, and they can actually have a more committed spend that when it's going down and we're starting to go down into the trough as well, so that they can help kind of modulate that a little bit more. And that's one of the things that we're looking for. I think it's really important too, and one of the things that we've been talking to all the politicians about is that when we talk about infrastructure, it has to be seen as more than just roads and transport, which is kind of dominating what in the definition of infrastructure at the moment. We're really trying to hold their feet to the fire on the fact that it isn't just roads and transport and build. It's all the things that a lot of our commercial builds are doing around. We're building hospitals, schools, big civil projects, libraries, and also the social housing that we're building. So making sure that that stays part of the definition of infrastructure as well.
Thanks, Sarah. Malcolm, your members are typically smaller residential builders and very much at the mercy of those peaks and troughs. Do you think what Sarah's suggesting will do the trick for them?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a case, and I touched on earlier on, for forecasting of workload going forward and understanding what the capacity is in the industry at any given time. So yes, my NZCB members are SME builders, mainly in the residential rental space, and they can pivot between new builds if that dries up to sort of alterations and additions, and then remediation works for floods and so on and so forth. But the mapping is really important, and I think it's even more critical in when it comes to social housing, in terms of big chunks of houses coming down the track, thinking about when they're going to be hitting the market. Very critical in terms of infrastructure and vertical projects, an example being like the Waterview Tunnel. So that when that was finished about 6-7 years ago now, there wasn't another tunnel to go on with, but there was another tunnel being forecasted. But the team that designed and constructed that is long gone by the time the next one comes along. So just sequencing the work, as I touched on before, not bringing it all to market at the same time, because it stresses and stretches the industry. And then when that sort of workload goes through, there's a lull. So just thinking about the market, getting better prices for the taxpayer as well, in terms of holding some of those works back if they're not entirely critical, that they can be delayed until the capacity is there in the market.
Thanks, Malcolm. A few, if not all of you, mentioned the vocational training sector and changes. We've, of course, got a lot of professional services as well in the sector. Keryn, I know some of the universities are having problems, and certainly Tipu Kinga services some of the design professions. Where do you think that part of the sector is? What does your part of the sector need to see out of that higher education system going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. We're seeing, as the traditional pathways, career pathways, or long-term and full-time study options are not an option for many of our young people anymore. The fact that there's no South Island-based university delivering a master's or a recognised master's program for registration for architecture registration is a problem for many of our South Island communities. I think it's interesting, many of our members have taken diverse pathways. They've come under a unofficial professional apprenticeship. They have done a trade before they've become an architectural designer. They've done a 2-year diploma, they've done a 3-year degree, they've done a master's. They may not have decided to go on to registration. They enjoy brilliant careers. I guess that's a story we want to share with more of our young people coming through. And I think it's interesting when you look at innovations like Concove's, kind of exploring the idea of professional apprenticeships. I think these are the new solutions that we need to be thinking about. We just need to be thinking about the many ways a person from many different backgrounds and many different kind of life experiences can enjoy a career in architecture. So we're very open to that. We want to support that, and we want to take fresh thinking about what our new generation of architectural professionals are looking for in terms of their learning, training, and education and careers. That doesn't say we don't value education. We value it hugely as in a formal education of the most traditional sense. We value all of those forms of education. And what we want is to see that there are many pathways available. But picking up on the earlier comment is that the pathways are clear, and we give our young people a sense of the possibilities and the potential of their futures, rather than creating a kind of a long, far off, distant view, which feels very unachievable for them.
Awesome. We've had a couple of questions, fairly broad, about climate change. Someone said they'd like to hear from every panelist. I think most of you have actually given you views on climate change, but I very roughly cut Sarah off as she was just starting to talk about it. So let's give you a couple of minutes to talk about what master builders want to do about climate change.
Thanks, Graham. And yeah, I was being a bit flippant saying it's years away, but in some ways it's kind of true as well. And by that I don't mean the impacts of climate change. We're having to deal with that now, and we all can see that, and the weather events we're having to manage. But what we've been looking for from government is a whole of government aligned response and action plan and clear policy direction. And that is what I was meaning a bit about. It is a bit years away, because we're not seeing that come out of government when it comes for our sector. A clear, aligned, integrated approach to how they're going to deal with climate response for our sector. We've been asking for that for some time, and it's spread across. The last time I looked, when I talked to James Shaw about this, I think there was something like 17 ministers that he was sitting across, right, 21 government departments, 23 CEOs, and they're all doing something different. So we're very supportive of making sure that we do reduce the impact of our sector on climate change, but it does need to be done in a proper way. It needs to be sensible. The regulation needs to be managed in a phased way when it's implemented as well. I mean, we've seen the issues we had around just the implementation of H1 and how many divergent views we had around that. H1's implementation is going to be very small compared to the entire kind of climate change response we're going to need to be making as a sector. Where personally, until we get that, until we can see an integrated full plan that looks ahead for the whole sector that we can get behind and have a look at, what we're focusing on is working more around the waste management side of things. We're quite excited about that. There's some really good work going on, and where we can get in and support that with our membership, but also as an organisation, we're definitely going to be doing that in the short term. So, I mean, that is one of the things that we are looking for and will be looking for whoever forms the next government, a really clear, aligned policy direction for the sector on what we're going to actually be doing to manage this.
So waste and circularity was quite a key there. There've been a couple of comments in the chat about the energy sector and Three Waters. Alan, on the civil sector, is what's your views around that? You've talked about pipeline and the need to focus work out. Do you think that the civil sector is ready for some of the major changes we know that the energy sector, for example, is going to have some major changes if we're going to move to more renewables, and the Three Waters has been on everyone's mind for the last couple of years?
Yeah, look, I think that the challenge is actually trying to understand what it is that Three Waters is going to look like more than anything. I mean, what we're finding at the moment, for example, is that water-related projects are actually being suspended or cancelled while we go through an election process, and while we look at what an incoming government, whichever that might be, how they may define what Three Waters looks like going forward. So that's more of the challenge. We're geared up to do whatever we need to do to support the policy that's put in place with the funding put in place to do it. But what we lack is an understanding of what it's going to look like.
And one last question before we start to round up. And Keryn, your members are kind of the first in the supply chain, if you like, when a project kicks off at the design stage. Are you, if you like, we could say that you're the canary in the coal mine, because if your people are quiet, everyone else is going to be quiet down the line. What are your feelings at the moment? Do we need a government to come in and stimulate the economy, or are we okay as we are? What's your views there?
It's a mixed bag out there, Graham. There's some parts of the country that are very quiet. There are others that are steady and feeling pretty positive. We're going to need some stimulation. There's no doubt about it. Some are saying it's quieter than it's ever been. Those who are more experienced, I guess, are just accepting, as we heard before, and probably a bit more prepared and have been there before. But it's certainly hurting out there for a number. So it is quiet times for many.
So I think we've got a message there for the government that, and we know governments around the world have been spending on infrastructure and housing to stimulate the economy. The construction sector has a huge multiplying effect. So there's a pretty common message here that we need to have a pretty sure pipeline, or we're going to see some pain in the industry. We've got just over a minute each for each of our panel members to give their final, what's the one kind of non-negotiable thing that you want to see from an incoming government to make sure that the sector does okay over the next 3 years at least. So starting back at the top again, we'll start with Sarah.
I think for us, we want to see that a very senior minister holds all of the portfolios together as one. We've seen that working really well under Labour, and we want that to continue with whoever has the government, whoever forms the next government. So it's what we'll be looking for. And we'll be looking for that minister to work with the government departments to implement a really clear long-term strategy for the sector that goes across political parties and longer than 3-year election cycles. It is at least 10 to 15 years out.
Excellent, thank you. Malcolm.
Much in the same vein, a continuation of the focus that the government has given the construction industry, particularly since COVID, and the response through COVID in their support of us was appreciated, sort of really got us through in better condition than we might otherwise have had. And I would, I agree with Sarah, we have enjoyed having a minister like number 3, number 4 in the ranking, and that means a lot. To have somebody at a high level is good for the construction industry.
Thanks, Malcolm. Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. As I said earlier, I think it is that promises don't build roads, and promises don't build tunnels and bridges, and promises don't build water infrastructure. It's time to stop talking about things and to actually do stuff. And that's what we'd like to see an incoming government do. And frankly, it should be a bipartisan approach to the next 30 years of infrastructure development. Can I just add, Graham, to your point before about some of the infrastructure, I had a chance recently to be in Queensland talking to our sister organisations over there, and the fact that Queensland already has, I think it's the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games coming up, but whenever it is, certainty of pipeline of work, the feeling amongst the industry over there and the community is vastly different to what we're feeling here when there's uncertainty.
Thanks, Alan. Keryn.
I thought he was going to pitch for the Commonwealth Games right there. I think we've all sort of said it. There's been some great work achieved in the last wee while. We're on a transformation journey that doesn't change overnight, but the fact that we're here together talking in these kinds of forums, and I've heard joined up thinking, systems level thinking over and over again. Please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've made some progress. Sure, it's not all brilliant. It's not perfect, but we're keen to keep on trucking on and to keep progressing in many of the directions that have been set. So we don't want to see a whole new, fresh way. We see some good promise in what's been started. So kia ora.
Thanks, Keryn. And Graham, back to you.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about new work today, and I think it's a little bit remiss if we sort of walk straight past our existing housing stock and the opportunity for the government to make a real impact there. So if we had warmer, drier houses for the people that are in the existing house stock, it actually is a massive change when you think about sustainability, because you're not building new houses. And I know that's probably a little bit counterproductive for some of the people listening, but that's also great health outcomes for the people that live in those homes too. And that's takes a whole lot of pressure off the health system as well. So yes, we need to have this pipeline of new work, and we get super excited about 40 to 50,000 new houses a year, but there's about 2 million houses already there that we seem to be just not ignoring, but I think we're walking past them a little bit. So we need to be looking in a couple of directions to what we do for the housing stock in New Zealand going forward.
Thanks, Graham. So look, that wraps us up. Thank you again to our 5 panelists. I think we've had a outstanding range of views put forward today. Let's hope that some of these future decision makers may be listening in. There is certainly a very common theme going through all our panelists today, that we want to see certainty out of government. We want to see actually a pipeline of work that's guaranteed no matter who comes into power in the next electoral cycle, and we cannot have an industry that's sustainable working on a 3-year cycle. That message certainly came through to me, and let's hope it comes through to the Beehive. So thanks everybody. We've had over 100 people on the call today. I think that's a great turnout for this time of the week. And again, thank you to our panelists, and we'll catch you all soon.